It's time for Recipe of the Day. It is a beautiful fall weekend and we need to make something to make our homes smell delicious. And so, Instant Pot roast pork is the thing that I have chosen. I have told you before about my best roast pork recipe that is done in the oven. But if you want to do it quicker, or you know what happens to me sometimes, especially on the weekend, is I have these plans to do something slow in the oven and then I end up out running errands. I don't get back till later. Then the Instant Pot comes in and it speeds up the roast pork quite a bit. First off, this recipe is calling for a boneless pork shoulder or pork butt roast. I usually do the pork butt. The actual recipe says 2 pounds, but then it gives times for however much your roast actually weighs. So usually mine is bigger than that. And so then I'm going to use those times and I'll talk with you about that. I'm also going to tell you a very special tip for what to do when your food is undercooked in the Instant Pot. It is brilliant. I love it. I know I've told it to you before, but maybe you didn't hear that episode, so you're going to hear it this time. Okay, so I said I usually use a pork butt. What is a pork butt? Boston butt is often what it's called as well. It is not from the butt of the animal. In fact, it is from the front in the shoulder area, divided in 2 parts. The top rectangular part is the one called the butt, and then the lower triangular part is called a shoulder roast, although both can be called shoulder roast depending. Now, why is it called a butt? So butchers back in colonial New England took this less popular cut and packed them in wooden barrels for storage and transportation. Those barrels that they used were called butts, and so these became the Boston pork butt roast. That's how that happened. Weird, interesting, right? Okay, now that we know that, we can dive into the recipe. So you're going to mix together in a small bowl some salt and pepper, 1.5 teaspoons of salt, 1 teaspoon of pepper, and then rub that all over your pork roast. I like to put it in a bowl first just so I can go in and out of the bowl and not worry that my hands have touched the pork roast. But if you're just going to sprinkle it all on there, you can do that instead. That's fine. Now, this recipe has you sear the roast in the Instant Pot using the saute function before you start, and you can absolutely do that, but I will tell you I don't, because I like to do the reverse sear. So I'm going to crisp mine up at the very end, and I'm going to get that caramelization then. The recipe that I'm linking to does both, and you can choose to just do one. If you're going to do just one, I recommend that you do the reverse sear, but either one is still going to get some nice browning on the outside, which is really good. So if you're searing it first, you're going to turn your Instant Pot to saute on high. And when the display says hot, or when you can tell it's nice and hot, you're adding in 2 tablespoons of olive oil or whatever kind of cooking oil you would like. Swirl that around in there, and then you're adding the seasoned roast and you're searing on all sides, about 4 minutes per side. And I say all sides because you can kind of do the top, bottom, and a little bit around the edges too. Okay, once it has been seared on all sides, hit cancel and remove the roast from the Instant Pot, set it on a plate, and then you're going to add in a cup of chicken broth. And this is where I'm going to say thank you so much to Zoop Good Really Good for sponsoring this episode. I love the entire Zoop product line. I'm especially fond of the broths and the culinary concentrates. I told you about the broths last time that I was talking about Zoop. I'm going to tell you about these culinary concentrates now. So this is instead of using like a bouillon cube or any kind of paste like that, you use the Zoop Good Really Good culinary concentrate. You can open that jar up, use some, and then put the lid back on and store it in your fridge. So it's super handy and convenient and less expensive. You don't have to have all those boxes, cartons of broth. You just have this in the fridge, and then it makes up 10 quarts of high quality, delicious broth. The clean label products feature unbeatable taste and are free of inexpensive fillers and added sugar, and are also free of the 8 major allergens. So they are super handy and delicious and perfect for this recipe. So you would mix together a cup of boiling water with a scoop of that culinary concentrate, mix it all together, and then I would typically add a couple of ice cubes there to just cool it down, because we're supposed to be starting with more like a room temperature water, and we want to make sure that everything heats the way that the recipe expected it to. So that's what you do there. And before I continue with the recipe, I want to tell you you that Zoop has given you guys a coupon code to try out their products if you order them on Amazon. So you head over there, go to the Zoop store. I'll put a link in the show notes, and you use the code 20recipeof to get 20% off between now and October 8th. And then I have another code for after that, 20 of the day will get you that same discount from October 9th till November 6th. So you definitely have to go check them out on Amazon and try these delicious products. Okay, so you're putting 1 cup of that delicious chicken broth into the Instant Pot along with a teaspoon of garlic powder. Stir that up and scrape up any bits from the bottom of the Instant Pot that might have stuck from the pork roast. That's super important. If there's anything stuck on the bottom in there, when the Instant Pot starts heating up, there's a sensor that detects that little bit of stuck food is getting hot, and that's what gives you that dreaded burn notice on the Instant Pot where it just stops working. So definitely scrape up everything really well. Then put the trivet that came with your Instant Pot, that little like metal rack, inside of there and put your roast on top of that. I like to put it fat side up so that as the fat melts, it's dripping down into the roast and flavoring the meat. Also, it stays drier, so it's going to crisp up better in the oven after. And then I take an onion cut into quarters and just distribute it around the pork. It just adds a little bit of flavor, and it flavors that broth, which you can use to make delicious gravy for this meal. Okay, then you are putting the lid on and you are using the pressure cook button on high. And now is when I tell you for how long. So if your roast is 3 pounds or less, it's going to be 15 minutes per pound. If it's 3 pounds, go with 17 minutes per pound. If your roast is 4 pounds or more, you're going to do 17 minutes per pound. Everything about the recipe stays the same other than that. Put the lid on, set it to pressure cook on high for the amount of time that you need. Make sure it's set to the sealing button, that little valve is turned the right way, and let it go. It's going to come up to pressure, and then it's going to cook for the amount of time that you told it to on pressure cook. Then you do a 10-minute natural release. That just lets the temperature change a little bit more gradually, doesn't shock the meat as much so it doesn't tense up when that cooler temperature happens. So the natural release just means you don't do anything. So when it's done counting down the pressure cook time, you just leave it alone for another 10 minutes. Then flick the valve over to venting and all the steam is going to be released. As that's happening, you can preheat your oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit or turn the broiler on. That works too. Then you're going to test the temperature of the pork. Go in with an instant read thermometer, and it needs to be a minimum of 145 degrees Fahrenheit. That is just for safety, but some people like their roast a little bit higher. If you're going to be shredding it, you definitely want it higher, as much as even 180 for doing like a nice shredded pork, pulled pork kind of thing. But 160 is a great temperature to think of for this as well. Now, if your roast is not at that temperature, here is the tip that I have for you. For cooking all kinds of roasts and really almost anything that's kind of on the larger side, like beets or potatoes, if they're not done when the pressure cooking time is done, what you do is put the lid back on, seal it up, and leave it on the keep warm setting for 5 minutes. If it's really under the temperature that you wanted, you could leave it for even longer, but 5 minutes, test it again. And the crazy thing is, even opening the lid over and over again doesn't seem to make it cool down too much in there. I think it's just because the roast has so much heat trapped inside of it, and then the compartment itself is fairly small, so you put the lid back on and it heats back up in there very quickly and can get that roast up to the temperature that you need. Okay, once that roast is at the temperature, then you can stick it under the broiler or in that hot oven just to crisp up the outside, like 10 minutes. Let it rest, and then you're going to slice it and serve. I will put the link to this recipe in the show notes for this podcast episode, or you can head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and get it there, or find it in our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/recipeotd. And hey, just a quick note. I'm on a recording hiatus right now, so for the next little while, I'm replaying episodes from the archives, including this one. If you heard me mention a holiday, a season, or something going on in my life that seemed a bit off, that's why. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you're enjoying these older episodes. I am Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, cookfor2.us, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. I hope you have a great day. Let's get cooking.